Good morning. I'm going to start this video out with a kind of picture of the tractor here. This is the L525 loader. I've got the L2501. I don't know if y'all can see that from the shadow. This is the four-wheel drive manual. What I'm doing today is I've increased my loader capacity. Now I want to explain how I did this. There's a lot of videos online. I saw them and was going to purchase everything I needed online and said to myself, it seems like there's an easier way to do that. The gauge was 150 down to 119 online to purchase the gauge. What I did is I said, I think I've got all the components. So what I did is I went and just took this coupler off of my line, and I had a cap in my shop out there, so I just pulled this cap out and capped it, and I already had a reducer right there. I don't know if you can see that. There's a reducer right there, and I had one of these gauges, but it was not the correct one, so I did have to buy the gauge. So all I did is use the coupler off of that and then cap that, and I already had this. The gauge I had was this one here. It is the exact gauge. The only difference is this only does 300 and that one goes up to 3,000. I went to the store and purchased that gauge. This is the box. For any of you that needs to get the numbers off of it or the information, you can pause the video and get whatever you need. Get this where it's not a glare on it. There we go. This gauge was like 22 bucks is what I spent on it. Had some Teflon tape laying around already. So just from the tape and a few wrenches that I needed, there's a 7/8, 15/16, 9/16, and 3/4. 9/16 and 3/4 is what I needed to connect the gauge here. That's all that was for. Taking the coupler off, I needed the 15/16 that fits on the coupler right here, and the 7/8 fits down here on our valve that we had to take loose right here, which is where you take it loose and you pull this down. There's a spring, and then there's a little plunger in there, and under this spring has the washers, and that's what you're going to take loose and put the washers in there to increase your loader pressure, according to what everybody said. I also needed a screwdriver, so these are the tools needed in a screwdriver, and it's going to be a kind of quick video compared to everyone else. There is what I done is, and I got this from another guy online, I didn't come up with all this myself. There's a little vent right here, little S tube right there. And that S tube, you just stick the screwdriver in that little question mark looking S tube on the end and plug it off, and all that does is keeps it where your fluid don't pour out when you take this boat out right here. That way you don't lose a lot of fluid. Now with that being said, let me get into the results of what I've done here. This is how I built my gauge. So it was only 20 bucks for this gauge that I purchased, and that's how I use the setup. When I'm done, I'll put this back on my line, of course, plug it back up. I can set this in the shed if I ever need it again. I can just use this same setup where I just cap the line off right there and borrow this fitting from that instead of having to buy one. They're not very expensive. I think they told me it was 20 bucks for this as well. Could have got the whole setup for 40 bucks. I think it was Neutralics is where I went. All right, now that we talked about that, my first idea, instead of buying the 3 washers that they recommend that comes with this, was to put one of these washers in. As you can see, this is the washers that comes in there, and I was just going to put it on the bottom, which would have been fine, because all it is a spacer to bring it up. So these washers wasn't going to work because they were too thick. When I took mine loose, I'd already had 4 washers in there. It's 4 of these and then one thin one. I'm sorry, 3 of these and one thin one. So this right here would put too much pressure. I ended up removing one of these out, and what I did is I took a razor blade, just a plain old razor blade, and I cut it in 3s and just put 2 little pieces on the bottom and put the washers on top, put the spring back in it, and put the plunger on it and put it back in here. And that's what it took, was removing one of those Now, coming from the factory, it's only supposed to have 3 of them. It's supposed to be 2 of them this thick and a thin one, but mine had 4, so it was already increased. Now, with that being said, coming from the factory, this loader was only supposed to have 2200 psi. Well, as you can see from here, these are the markings when I first started, before I put the razor blade in and increased it. At an idle is my first mark here. Then I idled it up as high as it would go, just as high as I could run my idle, and I was getting to here. Now those measurements are 2300 and then 2400. That's what it was pushing. So it was already above factory spec at 2200. What I did by putting them 2 pieces of razor blade in, it increased me, and I want to show you what I did. I plugged that off, of course, put that in. It's all off of there now. I'm going to crank up my tractor, show you what it cranked up, what it's coming up to. To the first mark there, that's 2700. Now I'm going to idle up to the second mark. Now, I'm going to shut that off. As you see, at idle, it was going up to 27, and then at max, it was going up to 28. I know a lot of people were stopping their loader right at the 25. I was almost there at the 25. I was at 24. I was still having some issues picking up some stuff, so I wanted to get a little bit more gain, a little bit more power out of this loader. Now, my loader is already out of warranty, so is my tractor. So by doing this, everybody tells you this will void your warranty. I just wanted to give some people an idea about what I did, and it might help some people. I would have just bought the shims that goes in down here, which is the factory shims right here. The reason I did not buy them shims is because I literally live close to 2 hours away from any place to get those, and they had to order them. And I said, well, that's a long ways down there, and I might still get them later and put them in. I don't know. As long as the blade works, which it should. It's just a piece of metal. It's stainless steel. It's not going to rust. They make them things out of surgical steel anyways for razors, so shouldn't be an issue. But I do want to give you guys an idea about how thick this is. Can you hold this phone real quick? I want to give you guys an idea. This is a micrometer. And for those of you that don't know, let me turn this to the 0. Put this out. Well, it was set, so let's set that at 0. That's calibrated and closed all the way. All right. For those of you that don't know, every one of them little marks in here is a tenth. It's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, all the way up to 1 inch right there, and then it goes on. All right, that's how you count measurement there. These right here that I'm at now, this right here is your thousandths. Now, 100 thousandths is when it goes from 0 all the way back around to 0. That's 100 thousandths, or 1 inch. So, I mean, or right here, 1/10 is 100 thousandths. Sorry, not 1 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this where it's dead on 0, where it's supposed to be, right there. All right, now I'm going to open this up. I'm going to mic this. That's 31 thousandths is what that comes to, this washer. 31 thousandths is how thick this washer is, the shim that comes from the manufacturer. The ones that you get, the 3 in a pack, is supposed to be 4 thousandths, which is way down here at about right there. Get to him. 4 thousandths. And then I think one of them's 2 thousandths. As you can see, you can't really see through that. That's very thin. Got it here. I'm looking at the phone. That's very thin right there. So, just to give you an idea how thin them washers is. So with the razor blade, I'll show you what this razor blade came to. And I'm going to check him. That razor blade is 3 thousandths is what that comes to. 3 thousandths. So 2 razor blades moves this to 6 thousandths. The 2 that they was gonna, the 3 washers I was gonna get from the factory was gonna be a total of 7 thousandths is what this would have been with the 3 they'd have sent. They wouldn't have sent one this thick, but it would end up being 7 thousandths. Sorry, 7 thousandths. I do not need 7 thousandths, 6 thousandths, worked out just fine when I removed one of them shims. I hope this helps one of y'all, and y'all can do it without having to buy anything, or if you got the stuff laying around like me, I had everything but the gauge. Hopefully this helps. All right.